Hey there. Welcome to Mike's Collection, episode 147. I'm Mike, and the part of my collection that I'm going to be talking about today is my Universal Monster figures, including the creature from the Black Lagoon. Now, I'm recording this on Halloween. I'm hoping to get it posted today on Halloween so you guys can maybe watch it. But that seemed an appropriate time to talk about the Universal Monsters. So let's get into that. I had actually considered doing my whole introduction in this mask, but just like I remember from when I was a kid, it gets very stuffy in there very quick, and I don't know if you were picking up my audio all that well, so I thought maybe it's best if I tuck this out of the way. So anyway, yeah, it's Halloween, so let's talk about Universal Monsters, because those are what I associate with Halloween, and I don't necessarily know why, but even more so than movies like Halloween, that are really based around the holiday. It's just the Universal Monsters are sort of some of the first horror movies, I guess. And they just, they're such classic characters that, have been classic Halloween costumes for generations. Dracula, Frankenstein. So, I just always associate them with Halloween. And it just so happens I have a bunch of new Universal Monster figures to show you. So since I was going to review those anyway, I might as well just cover all the Universal Monsters in my collection, because there's really not that many. Universal Monsters. If you're not familiar, they're called that basically because Universal Pictures produced all these monster movies. And it wasn't real. I was going to say in rapid succession. And they did make quite a lot of them. But it was over a pretty big range of time. Like we're talking from, I think it really started in 1931. That was with the first Dracula with Bela Lugosi and with Frankenstein. So you started with those two. And from there you got like the Mummy, who was also, Boris Karloff played both Frankenstein and the Mummy. Then you've got the Invisible Man. Lots of sequels to those movies. Like there was Son of Frankenstein or Tomb of Dracula or whatever. But the only sequel that, like Bride of Frankenstein, is an important sequel because it introduces a new classic character with the bride. Then you get the Wolfman in the 40s. And then finally, the creature from the Black Lagoon here in 1954. So those are what I consider to be the main Universal Monsters. There are others that you could kind of lump into there because there was definitely other monster movies produced by Universal that fell within that time frame. But these are the most iconic ones. I don't think I'm the only one that kind of feels like those 5 or 6 characters are the key Universal Monsters, and we don't necessarily consider the Hunchback of Notre Dame or the Phantom of the Opera, even though some people might lump them in. And I think primarily it's just how these guys are portrayed in pop culture that they often are kind of lumped together. So like, I was born in 1978, so I missed out on all those movies. Those are all well before my time. And like people my age or younger, your introduction to people like Dracula and Frankenstein was probably through things like cartoons. Like they had variations of these characters in like Scooby-Doo episodes, or there was kind of spoofs of monsters. Like there was like the Munsters and the Addams Family, which were actually both kind of before my time as well. But there was merchandise. You could go to McDonald's around Halloween and they'd have Happy Meals that featured characters like Frankenstein and Dracula. So that's kind of, I knew all those characters. They were just kind of in, the public consciousness when I was a kid. I was well familiar with them, but I hadn't really seen the movies. I saw this movie called The Monster Squad that came out in 1987. So I would have been like 9 years old at this time. And I absolutely loved that movie. Still do. If you've never seen The Monster Squad, I recommend you seek it out. But basically, all the Universal Monsters, although it wasn't produced by Universal, so it's not the officially licensed, but most of these characters are kind of in the public domain, so you can do a Dracula and a Frankenstein, and you're not really stepping on Universal's toes or anything to do that. They have the most iconic versions of them, but, there have been plenty of versions of Dracula and Frankenstein. The Hammer films that used Christopher Lee for Dracula is a popular example of how another company took it and kind of made it their own. But, Monster Squad, they took the Wolfman, the creature, the Mummy, Frankenstein, Dracula, and they brought them all together, and this group of kids kind of had to fight against them, kind of like the Goonies and stuff. It never really caught on and became quite as big as movies like the Goonies and stuff, but it very well could have. It's a great movie, great for family viewing. So yeah, definitely go check it out. So those are my introductions to the characters. I'm sure I had seen some of the actual Universal monster movies at some point. Probably the Wolfman, probably Frankenstein. Wolfman is my favorite. You might not know that from all this going on. But I think, like, not only do I love the Wolfman, but my brother Doug, who, you know, me and him were inseparable when we were kids. We kind of did everything together. He kind of chose Creature from the Black Lagoon as his favorite, and so Wolfman was my favorite. So I kind of always feel like this is Doug's character, but I do love the Creature as well. He's right up there with the Wolfman. So, yeah, even though I'd seen some of the stuff, it wasn't until DVDs came out, because, again, I'm dating myself, but if you go back to the days of VHS, you could go rent those movies, but, you know, your corner store where you rented your videos, they might have had one or two of these Universal Monster movies. They were really old movies, so it's not the kind of thing you could just find anywhere, and you couldn't buy movies, like, unless it was a Disney movie or a really, really popular movie. You know, they only put out, like, the biggest box office movies available to purchase. Those were the only ones that anybody had in their houses. But then when DVDs came along, every movie that came out for rental came out to purchase. So that's when everybody's DVD collections just blew up, and now you could have all kinds of movies. And the Universal Monsters, they put out these really nice collections, and I have the whole set of them here. So I purchased these. I think it was the early 2000s. I think I saw a date of 2004 on the back of one of these. But you see here, I've got the Creature from the Black Lagoon, and I've got the Wolfman, Frankenstein, Dracula, the Invisible Man, and the Mummy. So these collections were really great, because this was my real education into the Universal Monsters. You know, I might have liked them as a general, you know, the general idea of these characters, but this is when I became a true fan of the movies, and I understood why they became such cult, like, beloved characters. So you see with these sets, it's really nice packaging. You slide this out of here, then these kind of like book format, and you've got multiple discs inside. So you've got the main disc with the original Mummy, and then you've got this two-sided disc that has all of the Mummy sequels. So, like, just for this one here, the first disc has the Mummy from 1932. The second disc has the Mummy's Hand from 1940, the Mummy's Tomb from 42. The other side of disc 2 has the Mummy's Ghost from 44, and the Mummy's Curse from 1944. Besides all that stuff, they have bonus features, such as interviews with film historians. The main movies all have, like, film commentaries by film historians, so it really kind of, you know, gives you the behind the scenes and lets you know, like, why this was so revolutionary at the time and what they were doing that was new and different. And you really come to appreciate these movies if you take in all the bonus features and stuff. So I devoured all that stuff nearly 20 years ago, loved it, and I've loved the Universal Monsters ever since. As far as toys, when I was a kid, like I said, there was always, like, Happy Meal toys and things like that, sticker books or whatever. But for toys, when me and my brother Doug were young, we had these 3 3/4 inch, like, kind of Star Wars style, and 5 points of articulation Universal Monsters that were made by a company called Remco. And I don't know what happened to them. I seem to recall having, the one I remember most vividly is Dracula. I think he had a little vinyl cape, again, sort of like the old Star Wars figures used to have. I don't remember ever getting rid of them. I don't remember them breaking, because this would have been, I would have been really young. Like I said, born in 78. These figures came out, I think, in 79, 80. So I have just the vaguest of memories of having these figures. You know, I don't know what happened to them. I wish I still had them. But for a long time, like, so I had those as a kid, and then for a long time there wasn't any mainstream Universal Monster merchandise as far as action figures go. But yeah, in recent years there have been a ton of stuff. So I think I've wasted enough time talking here. So let's get into my Universal Monster collection. So we're going to start by looking at my reaction figure collection. So these aren't the oldest things in my collection. These ones here that you're looking at here I have had for a few years. But the newest figures that I do want to show you are also reaction figures. So I've done lots of videos on this line recently. These were some of the earliest figures released under the reaction banner. So I've been on board with this line from the beginning, but I've really kind of just taken a keen interest in the last 2 years or so, and my collection has really kind of blown up. So the name Reaction, it kind of alludes to like they're redoing the type of action figures from the 70s and the 80s. So where nowadays you get really detailed, larger figures with lots of articulation, these figures are supposed to be throwbacks to the 5 points of articulation figures of the 70s and 80s. So these are a lot like those figures that I had from Remco in that were released in like the 1980s. So these ones here, just to show you how early in the line this was. So you see this really great photo packaging, the black and white. You see on the back of the pack here, it says Funko and Super 7. It was originally Funko that had launched this Reaction figure line with the Alien figures. And then I think Universal Monsters was right behind Alien. So this was like maybe just the second or third property that Reaction had done. Funko has stepped away from it, and now Reaction is just a Super 7 brand. But yeah, that's how you can tell these guys are really early. So here's a closer look at the figure itself. So you can see it's not super detailed, but it's very true to those 70s and 80s action figure. The 5 points of articulation are just his legs, his arms, and his head turned side to side. Now, when Funko was doing the brand, they used these like photo images, these black and white photos for the cards, and it looks really nice. Now, if you've watched any of my past videos on reaction figures, you know I typically don't open these guys up. I like to just pin them to the wall as they are, partly because like the artwork is so much of the appeal to these things. I just took this guy down off the wall for this video for the first time in years, and I noticed that the glue has kind of come undone on his package, so I guess I could open him up and show you the figure. I've considered opening these guys up in the past, but at least for now, I think I'm going to leave him sealed up. So there's the creature. Next up, we've got the Invisible Man. Some really great black and white imagery there with Claude Rains playing the Invisible Man. And I love this figure. He's got the kind of the goggles, the bandaged head, the bathrobe, the little pajama pants and slippers. You know, not the kind of thing you'd expect out of a horror icon, but the last time I rewatched these movies, I realized that the Invisible Man, I think, has the biggest body count by far of any of these Universal monsters. You know, Frankenstein throws a girl into the lake or whatever, and that's about it. The creature, I think, kills a couple of divers. But this guy goes nuts and, like, derails a whole train and kills hundreds of people and stuff. So, yeah, he's a pretty bad dude. You can see on the back of the packaging here, so there was the Wolfman, Frankenstein, Bride, Invisible Man, Phantom of the Opera, Mummy, Creature, and Dracula. So I only got the 4 figures from this wave. I didn't bother with the other 4. And I kind of wish I had. The only reason I didn't is, I'll talk about it a little bit later, but I kind of just bought another set of Universal Monster figures in another format recently. And sometimes I just ask myself, like, how many times am I going to buy these characters in how many different formats? So with this one, I decided to buy my 2 favorites, the Creature and the Wolfman, and then the Invisible Man, just because I did not have him in another format at the time. And the Mummy, to be honest, I don't know why I bought the Mummy. I like the Mummy, okay, but he's kind of a boring looking figure. He's probably the most boring of the bunch. But we'll look at him in a second. Here's the Wolfman. So not the most ferocious looking Wolfman. He looks kind of like confused there. But he's in his classic outfit, just like the work shirt. You know, his clothes aren't all torn up or anything. He looks, just an average Wolfman. There's some great photography on the card as well. So I really like that one. And here's the Mummy. So yeah, there's not a whole lot of color in the Mummy. He's basically kind of a greenish gray for his dead skin, and then he's got the kind of yellowed bandages all over him. So not a whole lot to him. I might have got this guy maybe when they were on sale or something. Maybe that's why I picked this guy up. But I think the prices might still be on these. Yeah, so they were $13.99 at the time when I bought these guys several years ago. I don't know if there's a date on here. I can't quite remember when these figures came out, but I've probably had these guys for 10 years or so now. Pretty close to that anyway. So yeah, there you go. There's those guys. So those were my original Funko Universal Monsters. Now, when Super 7 kind of took over the license on its own, they actually re-released a new series of Universal Monsters. They re-released all of these figures, and instead of the photo packaging, they went with this painted packaging with the close-ups of the faces, which I think is a lot truer to the vintage Remco figures that they're kind of homaging. But I didn't feel the need to buy any of those either. Until very recently, I picked up this figure here. This is the creature from the Black Lagoon, but this is him from the third movie in the series. So in the third one, the humans capture the creature, they bring him onto land, and he kind of evolves, and he's able to breathe air instead of water. And so yeah, they give him these, like, basically, I don't know, prisoner outfit or these pajamas to walk around in. And yeah, so that's what this figure is based on. So you get that really creepy kind of painted artwork because you see those human-like eyes just staring you down. So this is what the packaging looked like for all of the Super 7 reaction figures. So you see here, there's no more reference to Funko on there. But here's the figures in Super 7's line. So you've got the creature. Now this one here, if you get close up, you'll see he's actually got some silver like restraints on his hands. That's because that creature figure is from the second Creature movie where he was also captured. I think that was called The Creature's Revenge, or Revenge of the Creature or something. So I have the creature over here from the first movie. This figure is very similar, but he's from the second movie, and then this one I hold in my hands is from the third movie. And there were only 3 creature movies ever made, which is I think the least amount of any of the Universal Monsters. So there's Dracula, Frankenstein, the Bride. There's the standard creature again. So they did re-release him. Wolfman. You can see the colors are a little different, perhaps, from Super 7's version from the Funko version previously. He's got a blue shirt there, where here he's got a green. There you've got the Phantom of the Opera, Invisible Man. Again, his slight color change from the Super 7 version from the Funko version. We've got the Mummy, very similar to what I've got there. Then we've got, who's this dude? Number 10. So that's the Phantom of the Opera. And sorry, so number 6, that is, they're both the Phantom of the Opera. Okay, there you go, different versions. And then you've got 11 is the Mole People, and then there's the creature that walks among us, which I've got here. So yeah, this is the only one I have from that series. So he's brand new. I just got him a couple of weeks ago. And the other figures I want to show you are also reaction figures, but they came in a different style packaging. So let's take a look at those. So this here is another Creature from the Black Lagoon reaction figure. And this one was, I can't even remember which convention it was. Super 7 over the pandemic has held lots of little conventions that they call like their stay-at-home-a-thon and things like that, where they make these figures available exclusively at their website. Because a lot of these reaction figures you can buy from other third parties. I buy a lot of them from Big Bad Toy Store. But every now and again, Super 7 will say, we're putting out a special edition of this figure. It's only available on our website for a limited time. It's part of this little convention thing we're doing. So this is one of those. So they released this figure with this packaging in both a color and black and white variations. So I picked up this black and white one because I thought it was a little different from the creature that I already have in my collection. Now, as you can see, I've decided to open this guy up. Even though I think the box is really cool, I think I can probably manage to get him back inside of there if I want to display him inside the box. I don't think that'll be too bad, but I really did just kind of want to open this guy up and play around with him a little bit because I've had that other creature figure for years and I've never opened him up. So yeah, there's just something about, with toys, you want to open them up and handle them. So yeah, here he is, up close and personal, lots of detail. And now this figure here with the kind of odd packaging, so you see it's got like the, it looks like it's in a fish tank. There's a little fish floating around behind him. There's like seaweed floating around him. I'll do a little insert shot so you get a better look at all this packaging. Yeah, this is an homage to a figure that came out in, I think, the 60s, maybe the 70s, which came out in that kind of box with the little seaweed and the fish inside. So I think the color version that Super 7 produced was like a miniaturized homage to that 70s figure, and now they've just given us a black and white variant. And I think the black and white one is really cool, because obviously you always knew the creature was supposed to be green, but when you watch those movies, they're all in black and white, and this is how you see them. So I really like here that they've done this kind of wash, so the black wash over top of the gray really brings out some of the detail, and this silver paint, is really nice too, very reflective. So yeah, it's really cool to see this guy finally up close and personal. Now, if I bring up my my other creature figure, you'll see this guy is not just a straight like repaint of that figure. Probably most noticeably is like right around the crotch area. You see this guy's is much thinner, where this guy has a much bigger, wider crotch. He's just like a bit of a bigger, bulkier figure in general. You can see the head sculpts are pretty different. Now, but that's because this was the one that was produced by Funko several years ago. If I look at the back of the packaging of this guy, which is one of Super 7's figures, and you look at their standard creature, I think it's fair to assume that this guy is just a repaint of the creature figure that they had previously produced. So there you go. Anyway, so I now have 3 creatures in my collection at this scale, and yeah, they're pretty cool. Now, just about 2 weeks ago, Super 7 had another one of their little conventions where they released a bunch of exclusives to their website. And they covered a couple of different brands. But the ones I was most excited about was some of these Universal Monster variations. So I picked up, I think, 4 of the 6 that were available. And I'll be honest, I am kind of kicking myself for not buying the last 2. I might turn around and order them again anyway. But at the time, these guys cost about $25 American. When you convert that to Canadian dollars, you're probably looking at a little over 30 a piece, and then the shipping is probably about $30, and then I did get dinged to pay customs charges of $30 when they arrived. So for these simple little figures, the price adds up quick, which is why I kind of had to convince myself that I don't really need every color variation. But yeah, now that I've got 4 of the 6, I kind of wish I grabbed the other ones. So anyway, let's first take a look at a couple of more creatures from the Black Lagoon. So here we go. You see the creature in this really nice pink box, and there's the creature inside. I have not opened these figures yet. I haven't decided if I'm going to, but I think I will. I might do that for you on this video right here in a second. So yeah, there's the creature. You see there it says official world famous Super 7 monsters. So now what this thing is an homage to, and I'll be honest, I didn't even know about this until these things went on sale. But I always get a kick out of the history of it, and that kind of makes me want these things even more, is I knew there was plenty of toy lines of the Universal Monsters over the years. They really became popular in the 60s, even though the movies started coming out in the 30s and the 40s. Action figures weren't really a thing. So it wasn't until the 60s that we started getting action figures. And one of the companies that made these was a company called AHI, and they made a line called World Famous Monsters. And they were like 8-inch dolls, kind of like the Mego style dolls. And apparently Mego and AHI had a bidding war to get the Universal Monster license. AHI won. They made their dolls and they put them on blister cards. So they didn't come in boxes like this. It came on a pink card with just a bubble over top, more like the other reaction figures I showed you. So I don't know why Super 7 opted to homage it in a box instead of a card, but whatever. I like the box. It's kind of cool. So there you go. I didn't know a whole lot about that particular line called World Famous Super Monsters by AHI specifically, but there's a really great website. It's called Plaid Stallions, and the guy that runs it, he publishes a toy magazine called Toy Ventures. I don't know how old this guy is, but he's clearly, I'd say, 10, 15, 20 years older than me. So he loves toys, but he loves toys from, an era a little bit before my time. But he's a great source of knowledge for figures like this. So apparently, back in the 60s, it was the 70s, sorry. This toy line ran for just a few years, from 1974 to 76. And they made all the Universal Monsters. Like you see on the back here, on the package, they say Frankenstein, Wolfman, Mummy, Creature. But there was also Dracula, and I believe others as well. So the Creature was included in that line, but the first time they made him, the proportions were a little bit off. He was too kind of wide and stocky. So then AHI made a secondary version of the creature, which at first glance it might not be immediately clear, but this figure is quite a bit different. So this is another creature in the same box, but if we look at them side to side, this guy is kind of taller and skinnier, much closer to the other figures I showed you, where this guy is like a lot bulkier and wider. So apparently these things both existed in the 70s in the 8-inch scale, and I don't know if it was a running change, like perhaps they started with this figure and then they realized that it was inaccurate, so then they stopped making that one and started making this one. But both of them were available in the 70s, and one of them is highly sought after collectible. They both are. I guess they're both pretty rare to find, but one of them, I'm not even sure which one, the wider or the skinnier one, is even harder to find. So if you're somebody that collects figures from the 70s, you know, these are the kind of things that would be grails in your collection. So it's very cool that Super 7 has given people a chance to own a little homage to those figures. Even though they're not 8-inch dolls and they're not carded, you know, they're still very, they're very close. And yeah, if that's something that you didn't think you'd ever be able to own, this is probably a pretty nice little substitute. So the boxes are the same. On the back, you get some really cool artwork of the creature himself. So there you go. And now these other figures that Super 7 released during their little website convention are glow-in-the-dark versions of 4 of the Universal monsters. And they said that these ones are inspired by the off-model colors that you often saw in merchandise back in the day, especially like old Halloween costumes with those plastic masks like I was wearing at the start of the video. So you see here we've got the creature from the Black Lagoon again, and now he's in yellow with big red lips, and this figure glows in the dark. So even this packaging, like, it looks like the old Halloween masks, and you know, I don't know if it's referencing packaging of something specific, but it looks very 70s-esque. When you bought those old masks back in the 70s, they probably came in packaging very similar to this, and they probably sold like yellow creature masks or, you know, bright neon green Frankenstein masks, things that weren't really accurate to the films, but that's what you get with a lot of companies knocking off public domain items and stuff like that. And here we have a glow-in-the-dark Wolfman with a very, he looks like a very black light colored yellow face with pink hair, pink fur, and then he's got the glow-in-the-dark kind of translucent blue body. So very cool. I love the packaging on these guys. This is why I hesitate to open them, just because they display so nicely just as is. But I think I kind of have to pop these guys open and take a look at them. So I went ahead and opened them. So I'm happy to report that with all these boxes, with this guy here, I just had to cut a little piece of tape on the top, and then this tray slid out, and there was no elastics or twist ties or anything holding him in place. So with the creature from the Black Lagoon figures, I can just pop them back in there, and even though I cut the piece of tape on the top, there is a flap, so this should still all seal up nicely like so. And if I choose to display it boxed, that will still work just fine. And same as with the other 2 figures, I had to slice 4 little slices of tape, and then they open like this. So more great artwork on the interior, and the figures were just resting in these trays. I just had to pop them out. Again, no elastics to cut or anything like that. So again, I should be able to put the figures back in there pretty easily, and then I can display them in the sealed boxes if I choose to. So it's nice to have that option. So here are the figures outside of the packaging. So let's first look at the creature, who I guess I should mention, his name is Gill Man. That's what they actually call him. And so you don't have to say the creature from the Black Lagoon every time. You can just refer to him as Gill Man. So this guy here, I'm pretty sure, is the same figure as this. They both have that same kind of skinny crotch area. The sculpting with the open hands, with all the gill fingers. So, or webbed fingers, I guess. So yeah, not surprised that these are the same mold. I'm pretty sure Super 7 will continue to repaint these things. Why not? So yeah, looks pretty great. So it's nice to have this guy in two new variations there. And then the other creatures. So you can see these, neither of these are just repaints of those guys. These are 2 totally new sculpts. And they look pretty goofy and awesome. Like very 70s-esque. They got the 5 points of articulation. Heads move a little bit. Very cool. Very simple. I like him a lot. Where's the other guy? There we go. So yeah, you can definitely see the differences here. When they first put these up for sale, a lot of people were commenting like, those two figures are the exact same. And it was only when people started commenting, that's when I learned about this whole running change that they did for the toy line in the 70s. And now that I have them in hand, you can definitely see that they're different. So yeah, if I had these figures as a kid and I wanted to build a little army of Gill Men, then yeah, I would love having the little variation like that. It's really cool. So, like these guys a lot. And lastly, let's take a look at Wolfman here. So, again, this is probably very close to the other version I have. I could probably haul him up here for a second. So here you see him next to the Funko version. So they're similar, as they should be. They're both based on the same movie, but they aren't the same. I would expect this figure is an exact repaint of the later Wolfman that Super 7 put out. So you can see here his feet. He's got a little bit more wolf-like shape to his legs and his feet. He's got the bent knees, where this guy has got very straight legs. The hands are a little bit different. His are a little more wide and like flat palmed, whereas his look like they could almost like hold a gun or a weapon or something. So similar but different. And yeah, I think this guy is a lot of fun with his crazy colors. And I guess the last thing we should maybe do before we get rid of these guys and move on to the next thing is see if we can get these guys to glow. Now, they just came out of the packaging, so I don't know how good of a glow we're going to get, but let's give it a try. So there you see a slight glow. Part of the problem is my room isn't pitch black right now because I'm shooting this in the afternoon, and I did just expose these figures to light a few minutes ago. But you do see a pretty good glow going on the Wolfman there. But yeah, the creature should glow pretty bright yellow as well if he's exposed to enough light. So yeah, pretty cool. Now, since we've been talking about Funko a little bit, I do have a few Universal Monster Funko Pops. So this was, again, another very early collection that Funko put out. If you're familiar with Funko Pops, they've been around for a good long time now, and they've got literally thousands, if not tens of thousands, of different figures and different licenses. And I did not know that these things would last as long as they did, and they would become so collectible, and early ones would be worth so much money. Had I known that, I probably would have bought the other Universal Monsters. Not because I really want them for the value, it's just now if I did decide to get them, it's so much harder to track them down. And I do love these things. It's just at the time I thought, you know what? I already have another version of these guys. So I'm just going to get my favorite guy. So I just bought the Wolfman. So here he is. Now the one other Universal Monster I have from the original lineup is the Bride of Frankenstein. And she's kind of cool because she was a figure I didn't have in any of their format. But I will admit the only reason I really picked her up is because she was on sale one day. I think I got her for like $6. And funnily enough, she's one of the more valuable Funko Pops in my collection now. I use the Funko Pop app to kind of keep track of what I have, and I think she's probably in my top 10 of most valuable Pop figures. So those were all I got from the original, so I missed out on the original Dracula, original Frankenstein, the original creature. I can't remember how many they had. But in more recent years, they've redone some of the characters. So I've got this second version of Dracula, which is very cool. And this one I really like. This is the Invisible Man, and this guy is a variant. He's in the black and white, so you could get the same figure with the colored, the red robe and the blue pajama bottoms, but here he's in the black and white, which I think looks really great. And some people might not dare to include these characters, but the fact of the matter is Universal has remade some of these classic movies over the years. Probably most famously is the Brendan Fraser Mummy movies, which, say what you will about them, they were a huge hit, and I think at least the first one was a lot of fun. So you had those movies, then they did the Van Helsing movie with Hugh Jackman, which was, again, based off of all these Universal Monster characters. They did Dracula Rising, I think they called it, which was a reboot of Dracula. And most recently, they tried to do a new shared universe, kind of like the Marvel Cinematic Universe, where they're going to bring all these characters back together. And the first movie they did was a reboot of The Mummy with Tom Cruise. And that movie tanked, or at least did not meet expectations. And so Universal ended up scrapping all their plans for a shared universe, which is too bad because it's been a few years now, but I think Javier Bardem was going to be Frankenstein and Johnny Depp was going to be the Invisible Man, and there was a lot of potential for some cool stuff. But unfortunately, because of the performance of The Mummy, we didn't get those movies. But I enjoyed The Mummy. It wasn't perfect, but there was some cool stuff in there. So I have the Funko Pop of the female mummy from that newer movie, both in her mummy mode, and I also have her in her pre-mummy mode. So, yeah, not exactly classic Universal monsters, but, you know, they fall under the same umbrella. Now, when I said earlier that the reason I didn't buy all of the characters from the reaction figure line when it first came out, or the Funko Pop line, is because I had just bought these figures maybe within the year before those two lines started. And as I stated, I've always loved the Universal monsters. I especially became a big fan in the very early 2000s when I got those DVDs and was able to watch all of the movies. And I really wanted these characters represented in my collection. But unless I was going to seek out vintage toys, there was really no easy way to add these guys. And as I mentioned earlier also, that back in the day, like in the 70s, or the 60s, you know, Mego produced a lot of these 8-inch doll figures. But when it came to the Universal Monsters, AHI beat them to the punch. However, in the mid-2000s, Mego came back. That company had been long dormant. And they came back and they started making these 8-inch kind of retro dolls again. And so Mego produced the Universal Monsters. And so I thought these guys were great. They felt vintage because I associate the Universal Monsters as kind of this old vintage line. So to get this brand of figures, I don't have any other figures like this really in my entire toy collection. So this was kind of fun. So I got these 5 guys. I can't remember how many more were available. There might have been a Bride of Frankenstein or something, but these are the 5 core characters. You know, Invisible Man would have been nice as well, but these guys are the classics. These are the guys from the Monster Squad. And yes, these guys are really cool. So, like I said, they're about 8 inches tall, so they're not like Barbie doll size, but they're built kind of the same way. So they've got that kind of, I guess you call it Barbie articulation. They've got cloth clothing, so you could undress these guys if you wanted to. I don't know if it's super easy. I don't know if these buttons... I've never undressed Frankenstein, believe it or not, so I don't know how easy it is to get all this stuff on and off of him. But I thought these figures were pretty perfect for what they were, what I wanted out of my Universal Monster collection. So once I had these guys, and I displayed them on my desk at work, I had kind of a shelf with some potted plants, and I had these guys all lurking about the plants. So I had these guys, I was really happy with them, and then Funko Pops and reaction figures came out, and I was like, oh, those are neat, but do I really need those guys? So yeah, I kind of wish I had them as well, but I still do love these guys. This Wolfman figure is pretty cool, although I don't feel he represents the Universal Monsters cinematic Wolfman very well. There's something about the face there that just doesn't look quite right. But still a fun figure. The creature here is kind of funny because the creature doesn't wear any clothes. So you think they could have just made this guy with no cloth clothing, but he actually does have, his gills are basically like tights. So you can see here, this is material. If you pull those up, he's just like a very bright green naked humanoid body under there. So it's kind of a funny way to approach the Gill Man. Now his looks like it'd be most difficult to take off. There's no clear seam, so yeah, I think you'd probably end up destroying this guy if you tried to undress him. Then we've got the Mummy. Very cool, very creepy looking. Unlike the other versions, like the reaction figure I showed you, I like how this guy's got those white eyes. It really kind of makes him creepy, like he's looking right at you. And I love his multi-layered bandages here. I think it works really well. So really cool. I like this guy a lot. And lastly, Dracula. So I love this guy. Bela Lugosi Dracula is classic. This figure doesn't look like a ton like Bela Lugosi, but it looks good enough for this style of figure. I love that he's got this cape with the silky inside here and everything. Works really well. You can pose him holding up the cape and everything. Get the medallion around his neck. The only issue I have with this figure is if you look at his complexion, very kind of white, almost yellow, and then he's got these hands that are very flesh-colored, very tan, normal human hands, and it looks kind of strange. A bit of an oversight there by Mego on that one there. But anyway, these are great figures. I still love these guys. And so with that, I just have a few more Universal Monsters to show you. Now, as much as I love all those figures I just showed you, I do consider them all very stylized. Like the Funko Pops, the Reaction, the Mego dolls. Those are all, very distinct, but they're not, any of them, very screen accurate. And my primary love, generally, with most toy lines, is to have something that's a true action figure, like 3 3/4 inches or 6 inches, with lots of articulation, with very good likeness. So I do have a handful of those in my collection. This here is a 6-inch or 7-inch creature from the Black Lagoon figure that I've had for a number of years. I think this predates all the other figures that I showed you so far, although it's not exactly an old figure, like it's still from like the 2000s sometime. And I can't remember which company made it off the top of my head. It might have been Diamond Select or Mezco or something. Anyway, I think they made a few figures in this line. But yeah, the creature's the only one I have. And it's a great looking creature. Lots of nice sculpted detail. Now, he doesn't have a ton of articulation. You see his feet move, his arms move, his elbows move as well as his shoulders. But there's nothing on his legs. Like, other than the feet twisting, like this is all just one solid piece. And even his head, no turning there, no opening to the mouth. He's very stiff, so other than the arms, it's almost like a statue. But very cool. And size-wise, this is the kind of figure I would need to interact with, say, other figures in my collection if I wanted to bring in a G.I. Joe Classified or a Thundercat or something. Like, this guy's kind of in scale with those guys. He may be a little tall, but I think the creature was supposed to be pretty large anyway. So yeah, very cool figure. And the coolest thing about this guy is the base that he came with. So this here, you get not only this piece of beach, but you also get a unwitting female who doesn't know she's about to be attacked by the creature. So you see she comes off of the base there. She's her own sculpted piece. No articulation or anything in here. But it really does make for a nice display to have her on the beach, and you can place the creature here on the sand behind her. And it's very cool. Very nice display piece. And the next figure I have here, this is Wolfman. But this is from the, I think it was 2010 remake with Guillermo del Toro and Anthony Hopkins. Now that, again, was Universal trying to reboot one of their franchises, and the Wolfman did not do very well at the box office, which is a shame. It wasn't perfect, but I thought it was pretty cool. I thought the makeup effects were really great. I believe it won the Oscar that year for the makeup effects. And yeah, it was decent. If you haven't seen the 2010 Wolfman, I'd say give it another chance. Especially on the DVD, there is like an extended cut, which you might find is a little better than the theatrical cut. So yeah, this isn't, the Lon Chaney Jr. Wolfman, which all my other figures were representing from the, the 1940s film. But yeah, this is a more modern update on him, but it's very true as far as the look goes. I like my Wolfmen to have more humanoid faces like this. I don't like werewolves from, like, say, Underworld or Twilight, where they have these big wolf snouts and stuff. I like my Wolfman to look a little more human. And so they did a pretty good job in the 2010 movie with as far as the makeup and stuff goes. And I think this figure captures that pretty well. He's got some, more articulation than my other figures, but like the creature I just showed you, he's still kind of limited. Like, you can't get a ton of great poses out of him. Like, his arms, even though they move at the shoulder and they twist here at the elbow and he moves at the wrist, he can't straighten his arms. Like, his arms are always going to be bent like this. His legs, there's articulation kind of here where the leg connects, but you can see you get this whole piece here with no articulation at the foot. So it's very limited in how you can move him. He doesn't move at the knee. He's got a joint there. So it's a cool figure, but again, it's almost just a display piece. It's not a true, like an action figure that would be great to play with, but still pretty cool. Now this last figure I have to show you is actually really cool. This was made by Mezco, and again, we're talking, it's probably about 10 years old or so. Like, there was hardly any Universal Monsters, like I said, throughout the the 80s and 90s, but come the 2000s, like there's lots of companies that are making toys of these guys. Even right now, there's some really great Universal Monster figures being released by a couple of different companies in all kinds of different scales, including a really nice creature from the Black Lagoon in the 12-inch scale that just came out. But anyway, this guy here, so he was from around 2010 or so, and this was a line not very articulated. Like you'll notice from the waist down, he's just one big solid piece. There's no joints to move his legs forward or backward. Can't bend his knees. His feet do turn a little bit from side to side. I love those big giant feet that he's got on here. Now he does have a mid-waist crunch, so he can turn there at the waist. Arms up and down. Wrists turn, and the head turns. So not a ton of articulation. Again, he's just a really nice display piece to stand there. But the idea behind these ones is that they were, very stylized. Like you see his head, it's very exaggerated as far as the shape of it, very big and flat. And they did a couple other figures in this wave. I know they did the creature. They might have done a Wolfman, but I don't think they got as far into this line as they wanted to. But what's also neat about him is like he's action figure with sculpted pants, but from the waist up he's got a cloth jacket, and this sweater here is also cloth, but it's very like tight and elasticy on him. It's an interesting blend of soft goods with sculpted pieces, and I think it works better than I've seen on any other action figure before. The combination of sculpted and cloth clothing looks great. And also I love the paint scheme on this guy. He's for the most part black and white, although he does have some red you see there on some of his cuts and scars. Anyway, very cool. My wife Vanessa bought me this as a gift one year, and I absolutely love this figure. Really, really great stuff. So that is a review of my Universal Monsters action figure collection. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please make sure to hit the like button and the subscribe button and leave me comments below. I always appreciate all your support, so please. Anyway, I guess that's it for now. So I'll see you soon with another video, and I hope you have a happy Halloween. Ciao.